Welcome to Sleep with Stories, where each tale is a gentle thread, woven to help you unwind after a long day and drift softly into the embrace of sleep. Tonight, we invite you into the hushed corridors of the Patchwork Manor, a place where every square of fabric holds a secret and every object whispers of lives once tenderly lived. Our journey begins with a choice, a deep indigo patch, the Nightfall Patch, and leads us through a quiet archway into the keepsake antechamber. Here, a humble spoon tells of unwavering care between two sisters, and a smooth, worn stone holds the wordless bond between a boy and his fading grandmother. These are not grand adventures, but intimate echoes, fragments of love, presence, and the kind of beauty that lingers in the smallest details. So settle in, breathe deeply, and let the soft cadence of these memories carry you into a world where the ordinary becomes extraordinary, and the heart finds rest in the quietest of things like this story. Subscribe for more calming tales. His fingertips finally settled on the cool, smooth fabric of the chosen square. The indigo seemed to deepen under his touch, drawing him in with a silent promise. Aurelia's smile softened, her gaze distant for a moment, as if she were already witnessing the unfolding narrative. "Ah, the Nightfall Patch," she whispered, her voice a soothing current, a journey into the quiet corners of remembrance. It speaks of moments tucked away, waiting for a gentle hand to bring them into the light. Aurelia gestured towards a discreet archway, almost hidden by a cascading tapestry of autumnal hues. "There is someone waiting for you, Elijah," she said, her voice imbued with a knowing certainty that bypassed any need for explanation, a keeper of forgotten echoes. He understands the profound weight of the seemingly insignificant. Elijah, accustomed to the logical frameworks of academia, found himself unresisting. The atmosphere of the Patchwork Manor had already begun to repattern his expectations, stitching a new kind of curiosity into the fabric of his thoughts. He moved towards the archway, the soft, quilt-lined walls seeming to guide him, the scent of aged fabric growing richer, layered with notes of cedar and old paper. He stepped into what felt less like a room and more like a carefully curated dream. This was the keepsake antechamber, a private study nestled deep within the manor's embrace. Every surface was adorned not with grand artifacts, but with an astonishing array of small, unassuming objects. A chipped porcelain thimble sat beside a tarnished silver button. A single pressed violet lay preserved under a dome of glass. A smooth, gray riverstone rested next to a child's wooden top. Each item hummed with a silent narrative, a testament to a life lived, a moment held. In the center of this quiet treasure trove sat Silas Hawthorne, a gentleman of 77 years, his stooped but spry frame perched on a well-worn armchair. His kind eyes, magnified behind wire-rimmed spectacles, regarded Elijah with gentle curiosity. His hands, gnarled from a lifetime of careful handling, rested on a small, polished wooden box. He exuded an aura of patient observation, a man who saw worlds in a speck of dust. "Welcome, Elijah," Silas said, his voice a low, warm rumble, like distant thunder promising a soft rain. He gestured to a matching armchair opposite him. "Aurelia said you chose the Nightfall Patch. An excellent choice, if I may say so. It's one that often leads folks to a deeper understanding of the echoes that reside in the quietest of things." Elijah settled into the armchair, the soft cushions conforming to his form, inviting relaxation. He felt a sense of unhurried peace he hadn't known existed. These are your keepsakes?" Elijah asked, his gaze sweeping over the countless items. Silas chuckled, a soft, dry sound. Indeed, each one a silent testament to a forgotten moment, a heartfelt, unsaid truth. They are not grand epics, no, but tender reflections on human connection, on the quiet beauty found in simple keepsakes. He picked up the small wooden box from his lap and opened it carefully. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, lay a single, slightly bent, tarnished silver teaspoon. This, for instance, Silas began, his voice dropping to a near whisper, belonged to my grandmother, Elara. She was a woman of formidable spirit, yet her greatest joys were found in the smallest of rituals. Every afternoon, precisely at 3 o'clock, she would prepare a single cup of chamomile tea. Not for herself, but for her younger sister, Agnes, who lived just across Willow Creek Lane. Agnes suffered from a peculiar ailment of the nerves, a constant tremor that made the simplest tasks a burden. Elara knew that the act of preparing and bringing the tea, with this very spoon stirring the honey, was a quiet declaration of love that Agnes understood without words. Silas paused, his eyes glazing over slightly, lost in the memory. One summer afternoon, when I was perhaps 8 years old, Elara fell ill. A fever, nothing serious, but enough to keep her abed. Agnes, feeling the absence of her tea ritual, wandered over, her usually pale face etched with concern. She found Elara weak but determined. Agnes, Elara whispered, "The tea. Don't forget the tea." She pointed to the cupboard. Agnes, despite her tremors, understood. She boiled the water, steeped the chamomile, and with hands that trembled so violently the spoon clattered against the cup, she stirred in the honey with this very spoon. She brought it to Elara's bedside. It was a role reversal, a silent pact of care. And for the first time, I saw Agnes not as frail, but as strong, her love overcoming her affliction for a precious few minutes. The tea was spilled, yes, a good deal of it, but the love, that was entirely contained. The spoon, bent slightly from that day's clatter, reminds me that the most profound acts of compassion are often found not in grand gestures, but in quiet, everyday persistence in the simple, unbroken rhythm of care. Elijah listened, mesmerized. The air in the antechamber felt thicker, warmer, imbued with the palpable presence of Elara and Agnes, of a love that transcended words. The spoon, a mere utensil, suddenly felt like a conduit to a deep, resonant truth. Silas then carefully replaced the spoon and reached for another item, a smooth, flattened stone, no larger than a child's palm, with faint, almost imperceptible grooves etched into its surface. "This stone," he said, his voice picking up a quiet cadence, came from the old mill stream, just outside the rain-kissed haven. It holds the story of my eldest son, Thomas. Thomas was a boy of few words, preferring the company of the ancient oak trees and meadowsweet dell to the boisterous games of his peers. He had a deep, quiet affection for his grandmother, Elara, the same one who owned the spoon. Silas's gaze softened. When Thomas was nearing his 11th birthday, Elara began to fade. Her mind, once so sharp, drifted in and out of lucidity. Thomas, observing this with a quiet sadness, began to spend his afternoons by the mill stream. He wasn't fishing, wasn't playing. He was simply collecting these stones, smooth and flat, and rubbing them, one against the other, in a slow, rhythmic motion. I watched him once, hidden by the willow trees. He was polishing them, almost as if he was trying to rub away the rough edges of time itself. One evening, Silas continued, he brought this particular stone to Elara's bedside. It was the smoothest of them all, its surface almost luminous. He placed it in her hand, and for a moment, her eyes, usually clouded, cleared. She looked at the stone, then at him, and a flicker of recognition passed between them. Thomas didn't say a word. He just sat by her, holding her hand, while she held the stone. It was his way of communicating, of saying, "I see you, I remember you, I love you," without the burden of language. The faint grooves on its surface, those are the marks of his quiet, persistent love, worn into the stone from countless hours of gentle friction. It taught me that love, in its purest form, often doesn't need grand pronouncements or intricate declarations. Sometimes it's simply the quiet act of presence, of holding a smooth stone, of a shared, unspoken understanding that transcends the fraying edges of memory. Elijah found himself holding his breath, a tear tracing a path down his cheek. He hadn't realized he was crying. The stories were not dramatic, no, but they resonated with an unexpected depth, a tenderness that spoke directly to the often overlooked beauty of human connection. Silas wasn't just telling stories. He was revealing the very essence of what it meant to live, to love, to remember. Each relic wasn't merely an object. It was a condensed moment of profound humanity. The room, filled with these quiet testaments, felt like a sacred archive of ordinary miracles. As Silas finished, a soft, comfortable silence settled over the antechamber. The rain outside seemed to slow its rhythm, almost holding its breath. Elijah felt a profound sense of peace, a quiet warmth spreading through him. He understood now the power of the nightfall patch, of the indigo square he had chosen. It had led him not to a grand adventure, but to an inner landscape, to the quiet, vital heart of human experience. "Thank you, Silas," Elijah said, his voice a little hoarse with emotion. "These stories, they are remarkable. They make me see everything differently." Silas smiled, a deep contentment in his eyes. "They are merely echoes, Elijah. The true stories reside within each of us, waiting for a gentle touch to release them. The Patchwork Manor, you see, is merely a conduit. Aurelia has a way of knowing which conduit needs to be opened and for whom." He nodded towards the archway. "There's another thread waiting for you, I believe. One that weaves through the mists of time itself." Elijah rose, feeling lighter than when he had entered, yet also deeply grounded. He passed back through the archway, the scent of lavender returning, mingling with the cedar. Aurelia was waiting, her hands busy with a delicate piece of lace, her eyes still holding that warm, knowing amusement. "The nightfall patch is a powerful guide, isn't it?" Aurelia mused, not a question, but a gentle affirmation. "It prepares the heart for the deeper currents. Now, for the thread that intertwines beyond the visible. Your indigo choice calls for a journey, a crossing." She led Elijah to another, less obvious exit, a narrow doorway that opened directly into the soft, persistent rain. A covered path, woven with vibrant, waterproof quilt squares, led away from the manor, disappearing into the muted green landscape. The air grew cooler, carrying the scent of damp earth and distant pine. The path wound through ancient, gnarled trees, their branches dripping with rainwater, until it opened onto the banks of a placid, dark lake. This was Whisperwind Tarn, its surface reflecting the perpetually overcast sky like a sheet of hammered pewter. Across the tranquil water, a faint, flickering light beckoned. It was the soft glow of a lantern, casting a small circle of warmth against the encroaching twilight. A small, simple rowboat, painted a gentle moss green, was tied to a small wooden dock. "Cross the tarn, Elijah," Aurelia instructed, her voice barely a whisper above the gentle patter of rain on leaves. "There you will find Elder Hollis Oakhaven. She is a weaver of larger truths, deeply connected to communal memory, and she holds the threads that bind us across generations." Elijah hesitated for a moment, then stepped into the rowboat. The wood felt solid beneath his feet. The oars were already in place, worn smooth by countless hands. He pushed off from the bank, the boat gliding silently across the water, disturbing only the faintest ripples on the tarn's dark surface. The flickering light grew steadier, brighter, drawing him forward. As he neared the opposite shore, he could discern a figure seated on a gnarled root of an ancient willow tree, silhouetted against the lantern's glow. This was Hollis Oakhaven, a woman estimated to be in her 90s, though her presence felt ancient, spanning centuries. Frailty was belied by her intensely clear, knowing eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of forgotten ages. She was draped in simple, hand-spun fabrics, a shawl of undyed wool wrapped around her shoulders. Her hands, delicate as dried leaves, rested on a smooth, dark stone, similar in shape to the one Silas had shared, yet different, radiating an even deeper stillness. Her oak heaven's illumination candle, a flickering lantern crafted from darkened copper and ancient glass, cast its soft, unwavering light upon her. Hollis watched Elijah approach, her expression unreadable, yet profoundly comforting. She offered no greeting, only a slight inclination of her head as he docked the boat and stepped onto the damp earth. The air here was even cooler, carrying the scent of deep earth and the subtle musk of ancient moss. "Welcome, Elijah Stone," Hollis said, her voice a low murmur like the gentle rustle of autumn leaves. It carried an unusual resonance, as if each word had been shaped by untold years. "Off wisdom. The indigo patch, I gather, has brought you to the deeper currents." Silas speaks of the threads that connect us in the immediate, the personal. I speak of the interwoven tapestry, the subtle ways lives intertwine across the generations, the enduring memory of the land itself. Elijah sat on a moss-covered stone nearby, the lantern's light painting long shadows across Hollis's ancient face. He felt no urge to speak, simply to listen. Hollis's gaze drifted across the dark surface of the tarn, then back to the flickering flame of her lantern. There was a time, she began, her voice gaining a quiet, hypnotic rhythm, when this tarn whisper wind. Tarn was not merely a body of water, but a mirror for the entire village. Long before the rain-kissed haven as you know it, there was a small settlement here, founded by folks who sought peace away from the clamor of the world. They were simple farmers, weavers, and storytellers. One among them was a young woman named Kaylin. Kaylin possessed a peculiar gift. She could feel the land, its memories, its dreams. She would walk through the fields, and the whispers of the earth would come to her, telling tales of what had been and what was yet to be. Hollis paused, her gaze settling on Elijah. One harsh winter, an unexpected frost descended, bitter and relentless. The crops withered, the animals grew weak. Despair began to creep into the hearts of the villagers. Kaylin, burdened by their fear, walked to the tarn. She stood at its edge, shivering, but not from the cold. She closed her eyes and listened. She listened not for voices, but for the hum of resilience, the deep, enduring pulse of life that remained even in the bleakest of times. And the tarn, the ancient, knowing tarn, showed her a vision, a single, tenacious root, deep beneath the frozen ground, drawing strength from the hidden waters, waiting for the spring. Kaylin returned to her people. Hollis continued, her voice gaining a quiet power. She did not tell them of her vision directly. Instead, she began to sing. She sang old songs of renewal, of roots that found water in drought, of seeds that burst forth from frozen earth. She told stories of patience, of trust in the unseen currents of life. And she taught them a simple ritual, to gather by the tarn each evening, not to despair, but to light small, individual lanterns, and to look into the water, not for their reflections, but for the reflection of the distant stars, no matter how clouded the sky. They were to remember that even when the immediate world was dark, there was a greater light, a larger pattern that persisted. Hollis reached into a small, hand-woven pouch at her side and produced a single, perfectly smooth, dark river stone. Cool and heavy in her palm, it was remarkably similar to the one Silas had shown, yet somehow felt older, imbued with deeper echoes. The villagers endured that winter, she said, offering the stone to Elijah. They learned to look beyond the immediate hardship, to find solace in the shared ritual. in the enduring presence of the tarn and the distant stars. This stone, passed down through generations, is not just a keepsake. It is a tarn stone, a reminder that true resilience comes not from fighting the darkness, but from finding the quiet, persistent light within it, and from knowing that we are all interconnected, like the waters of the tarn and the hidden streams that feed them. Elijah took the stone. It was cool against his skin, smooth and comforting. He could almost feel the echoes of those ancient villagers, their hopes and fears, their quiet endurance, vibrating within its surface. He understood then that Hollis's stories were not just about individuals, but about the collective spirit, the shared legacy of humanity. Hollis's gaze turned towards the thick canopy of trees surrounding the tarn, and then there was the story of the Whispering Woods. She murmured, her voice barely audible above the gentle sigh of the wind through the leaves. Beyond this very tarn, nestled deep within the oldest part of the forest, is a grove of ancient sentinel oaks, their roots intertwined beneath the forest floor, forming a vast invisible network. Generations ago, a young woman named Alara, the first Alara in a line of healers and storytellers, ventured into these woods seeking knowledge. Not book knowledge, but the wisdom of the earth, the trees, and the silent, enduring pulse of life. Alara was troubled, Hollis continued, her eyes holding a far-off look. Her village, not far from here, was experiencing a period of discord. Arguments simmered, trust eroded, and the once harmonious community was fragmenting. She felt the pain of it, a dull ache in her own spirit. She spent days among the sentinel oaks, observing their quiet strength, their interconnectedness. She noticed how even when a storm raged, the trees stood together, their roots providing mutual support, their branches weaving a protective canopy. She saw how the older trees shared their wisdom with the younger ones through their roots, a subtle exchange of nutrients and knowledge that ensured the survival of the entire grove. One evening, Hollis recounted, her voice rising slightly with quiet intensity. As twilight descended, Alara fell into a deep contemplation beneath the largest of the sentinel oaks. She felt the ancient roots beneath her, humming with life, and she understood. The trees were a living metaphor for her community. Their strength lay not in individual might, but in their shared, invisible connections. She realized that the solution to her village's discord was not in finding blame, but in rekindling the lost threads of connection, the unspoken understanding that bound them all. Hollis reached into her pouch again, and this time she pulled out a small, intricately carved wooden acorn, polished smooth by countless touches. It had a tiny, almost invisible hole drilled through its cap. Alara returned to her village with a simple idea, Hollis said, extending the acorn to Elijah. She didn't preach, she didn't scold. Instead, she began to craft small wooden acorns, just like this one, from the fallen branches of the sentinel oaks. She gave one to each family, asking them to hold it each evening and remember the wisdom of the trees. That true strength comes from deep, invisible connections, from mutual support, and from the quiet understanding that binds us all. The hole in the acorn? It was for a thread, a reminder that each family was a part of a larger, interconnected tapestry, a single thread woven into the whole. Elijah took the wooden acorn. It felt light and warm, imbued with the quiet wisdom Hollis had just imparted. He understood. It wasn't about grand pronouncements, but about small, tangible reminders, symbolic mementos that anchored profound shared wisdom. Hollis's narratives wove a complex tapestry of enduring memory and the subtle ways lives intertwine, leaving a lasting impression of the quiet belonging found in the collective human experience. He felt a sense of ancient wisdom settling upon him, a deeper understanding of his own place within the vast web of existence. The rain had almost ceased, reduced to a soft, rhythmic drip from the leaves. The air was cool, clean, and infused with the scent of wet earth and pine. Elijah looked at the tarn stone in one hand and the wooden acorn in the other. They were simple objects, yet through Hollis's stories, they had become profound symbols, imbued with extraordinary meaning. He felt a deep, comforting sense of rest, a quiet belonging that transcended the physical boundaries of the tarn. He stood, a newfound lightness in his step. Hollis merely nodded, her knowing eyes fixed on his. He rode back across Whisperwind Tarn, the silence of the water now feeling less empty and more resonant, filled with the echoes of ancient songs and unspoken truths. The Patchwork Manor emerged from the mist as he approached, its quilt crafted, walls glowing softly in the muted light. Aurelia was waiting at the edge of the covered path, a gentle smile on her face. "The journey has been illuminating, I trust?" she asked, her voice soft as the rain. "More than illuminating, Aurelia," Elijah replied, a genuine smile spreading across his face. "It was deeply, profoundly peaceful. I feel as though I've been sewn into a much larger story than my own." He looked at the tarn stone and the wooden acorn in his hands. These are remarkable." "They are merely keys, Elijah," Aurelia said, her eyes twinkling. "Keys to unlock the quiet magic that resides in every ordinary moment, in every human connection. The quiltmaker's house offers a serene escape, a gentle meandering through narratives that celebrate the unassuming magic of life. It's a place where ordinary moments are imbued with extraordinary meaning, lulling the listener into a state of peaceful contemplation." Elijah nodded, looking back towards the shimmering surface of Whisperwind Tarn, then at the Patchwork Manor. He had arrived a weary scholar, burdened by the weight of expectations and the relentless pursuit of knowledge. He was leaving as something more, something quieter, something profoundly touched. The stories of Silas and Hollis had not offered grand solutions or dramatic epiphanies, but a far more valuable gift, a renewed appreciation for the gentle rhythms of life, the hidden strength and vulnerability, and the enduring power of connection. Each story, softly unfurling like a dream, had indeed left a lasting impression of quiet belonging and a deep, comforting sense of rest. He knew, with a certainty that settled deep in his bones, that the indigo patch had been the perfect choice. His journey, though internal, had been the most profound he had ever undertaken. The soft rain continued, a lullaby against the quilt-lined walls, as Elijah carried his quiet discoveries back into the world, forever changed by the threads of warmth and wonder woven within the Patchwork Manor, like this story. Subscribe for more calming tales. "They are merely keys, Elijah," Aurelia said, her eyes twinkling. "Keys to unlock the quiet magic that resides in every ordinary moment and every human connection. The quiltmaker's house offers a serene escape, a gentle meandering through narratives that celebrate the unassuming magic of life. It's a place where ordinary moments are imbued with extraordinary meaning, lulling the listener into a state of peaceful contemplation." Elijah nodded, looking back towards the shimmering surface of Whisperwind Tarn, then at the Patchwork Manor. He had arrived a weary scholar, burdened by the weight of expectations and the relentless pursuit of knowledge. He was leaving as something more, something quieter, something profoundly touched. The stories of Silas and Hollis had not offered grand solutions or dramatic epiphanies, but a far more valuable gift, a renewed appreciation for the gentle rhythms of life, the hidden strength and vulnerability, and the enduring power of connection. Each story, softly unfurling like a dream, had indeed left a lasting impression of quiet belonging and a deep, comforting sense of rest. He knew, with a certainty that settled deep in his bones, that the indigo patch had been the perfect choice. His journey, though internal, had been the most profound he had ever undertaken. The soft rain continued, a lullaby against the quilt-lined walls, as Elijah carried his quiet discoveries back into the world, forever changed by the threads of warmth and wonder woven within the patchwork manor. Aurelia stood beside him, her presence a silent echo of the manor's comfort. The turnstone, cool and smooth, rested in Elijah's left palm, its surface a testament to collective endurance. The small wooden acorn, warm and light, nestled in his right, a symbol of invisible bonds. He turned them over, feeling their textures, their unassuming weight. They were more than simple objects. They were anchors tethering him to the narratives he had just received, to the quiet wisdom that now hummed within him. "Thank you, Aurelia," he said again, his voice imbued with a sincerity he rarely allowed himself. "For everything." She simply smiled, her gaze soft, her eyes holding the depth of an ancient forest. "The journey continues, Elijah. It merely shifts from the spoken word to the quiet observation. The threads are always there, waiting to be seen." He took a slow, deep breath, the clean, damp air of the rain-kissed haven filling his lungs. The perpetual soft rain had indeed become a gentle, rhythmic hum, no longer a source of melancholic introspection, but a soothing backdrop to a newly discovered peace. He stepped onto the covered path, its vibrant quilt squares a comforting mosaic. Beneath his feet, each step away from the patchwork manor felt less like a departure and more like a gentle transition, carrying the warmth and wisdom within him. The path wound gently through the village, past the sleepy bookshop, the quiet tome and tea, its single lantern casting a soft amber glow onto the rain-slicked cobblestones. Normally, Elijah, the academic, would have been drawn to the scent of old paper and the promise of new knowledge within its walls. But tonight, his mind was full. He had found a different kind of knowledge, one not bound by pages or theories, but by the quiet resonance of human experience. He simply noted its tranquil presence, a harmonious part of the sleepy village, and continued on. He reached the small, unassuming inn where he had booked a room, a place chosen for its proximity to the rumored quilt maker's house, which he had initially dismissed as local folklore. The innkeeper, a stout, kindly woman named Martha, looked up from her ledger as he entered. Her eyes, usually bustling with efficient concern, softened at the sight of him. "Mr. Stone, you're back," she observed, her voice low. "You look different." She didn't press, simply offered a small, knowing nod, as if she had seen many such transformations. Perhaps she had. The quiltmaker's house had been a quiet legend in rain-kissed haven for generations. Elijah simply smiled, a genuine, unforced expression that felt foreign on his usually serious face. "I suppose I do, Martha," he conceded. He found himself not wanting to explain, not needing to. The experience was too delicate, too profound for words that might diminish its essence. He simply nodded his goodnight and ascended the creaking stairs to his room. Once inside, he didn't immediately turn on the lights. He stood by the window, listening to the soft patter of rain against the pane, the distant murmur of Willow Creek Lane. He opened his hands, gazing at the turnstone and the wooden acorn. They were not just objects. They were talismans of memory, imbued with the quiet strength of Seelan's song and Alara's wisdom. He placed them carefully on the small bedside table beside his travel journal, which now seemed almost comically inadequate to capture the depth of his recent experience. He sat on the edge of the bed, not bothering to undress. His mind, usually a whirl of academic theories and research questions, was remarkably still. The stories of Silas and Hollis played gently in his thoughts, not as narratives to be analyzed, but as experiences to be felt. He saw Agnes, trembling but determined, stirring tea for her ailing sister. He saw young Thomas, polishing stones by the mill stream, communicating a love too profound for words. He felt the ancient villagers by the tarn, lighting their lanterns, finding hope in distant stars. He imagined the sentinel oaks, their roots intertwined, sharing wisdom and silent understanding. These weren't grand epics. They were quiet moments, humble acts, small objects, yet they hummed with a truth that transcended the most complex philosophical texts he had ever encountered. It was the truth of human connection, of resilience born not of defiance, but of gentle persistence, of finding profound meaning in the unassuming rhythm of everyday life. The next morning, the rain continued, a soft, steady whisper against the window pane. Elijah rose, feeling an unfamiliar lightness. He packed his bag, carefully placing the tarnstone and the wooden acorn into a small velvet pouch he always carried for his eyeglasses, now giving them a more sacred purpose. He would not be leaving them behind. His journey back to the city, usually a period of restless planning and mental review, was different. He watched the landscape unfold outside the train window, not as a blur of uninteresting scenery, but as a tapestry of small moments. A lone farmer in a field, a child waving from a porch, the way the light fell on a cluster of old trees. Each held a quiet beauty he had previously overlooked. He found himself not pulling out his academic papers, but simply observing, allowing his mind to wander, to contemplate, to simply be. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. It was late 2013, and the vibrant energy of the academic year was in full swing. Elijah returned to his familiar routine: lectures, seminars, endless research, but something had fundamentally shifted within him. His office, once a chaotic landscape of overflowing bookshelves and stacks of papers, now felt different. He began to organize it, not with the frenetic energy of an impending deadline, but with a quiet, deliberate calm. As he sorted through old notes, forgotten drafts, and half-read books, he found himself pausing. A faded photograph of his grandfather, a man he had barely known, emerged from a box of old lecture slides. He looked at the gentle curve of his grandfather's smile, the way his eyes seemed to hold a distant dream. Before, it would have been just a picture filed away. Now, Elijah found himself tracing the lines of his grandfather's face, wondering what quiet stories, what untold truths that man had carried. He remembered Silas and his relics, and suddenly, this photograph became his own quiet testament, a relic of a life, a moment, a truth he would never fully know, but could now profoundly appreciate. He started small, subtle changes in his daily life. Instead of rushing through his morning coffee, he would sit by the window, watching the city awaken, noticing the subtle shifts in light, the gentle patterns of rain on the asphalt. He saw the hurried footsteps of commuters not as an annoying disruption, but as a collection of individual journeys, each one a thread in the vast, unseen tapestry Hollis had described. One afternoon, a student, usually boisterous and self-assured, came to his office looking visibly distressed. The student had failed a crucial exam, and his usual bravado had crumbled, revealing a deep vulnerability. In the past, Elijah might have offered academic advice, a logical pathway to improvement, but the stories of Silas and Hollis resonated within him. He remembered the quiet persistence of Agnes, the unspoken love of Thomas. He saw the student not just as a failing grade, but as a human being struggling with a profound sense of inadequacy. He didn't offer immediate solutions. Instead, he simply listened. He let the student speak, pouring out his fears and frustrations. Elijah noticed the slight tremor in the student's hands, the catch in his voice. He offered a warm, comforting presence, a quiet space for the student to simply be vulnerable. And then he shared a small, seemingly inconsequential story, a personal anecdote from his own academic journey where he had faced a similar quiet defeat. He spoke not of grand recovery, but of the small, persistent steps, the quiet moments. Of resilience, the simple act of showing up again the next day. He saw a flicker of recognition in the student's eyes, a softening of his tense shoulders. It was a small moment without grand pronouncements, but Elijah felt a thread of connection, a subtle exchange of understanding, much like the roots of the sentinel oaks sharing wisdom. He also found himself drawn to quiet, overlooked places. In the bustling city, a small, neglected community garden tucked between towering buildings, where a few tenacious plants pushed through cracked concrete. The tiny, unassuming park bench where an elderly woman meticulously fed pigeons each morning, her movements slow and deliberate. These were not places he would have noticed before, but now, through the lens of Silas's relics and Hollis's interwoven tailies, they pulsed with unassuming magic. They were testaments to forgotten moments, to heartfelt, unsaid truths, to the quiet beauty found in simple keepsakes of urban life. One particularly gray, soft raining Tuesday, much like the weather in rain-kissed Haven, Elijah was walking home. From the university, he noticed a small, abandoned child's mitten lying on the sidewalk, half hidden beneath a fallen leaf. Before his visit to the Patchwork Manor, he would have dismissed it as litter, or perhaps felt a fleeting pang of pity for the lost child. But now, he paused. He knelt down, picking up the small, damp mitten. It was blue with a tiny, faded image of a smiling cloud stitched onto its thumb. He held it, feeling its damp softness, its smallness. He thought of the unseen hand that had worn it, the child's giggles, perhaps a parent's gentle squeeze. He thought of Silas and the profound stories held within such humble objects. This mitten, to any other passerby, was just a forgotten item. To Elijah, it was a silent testament to a forgotten moment, a small narrative unspooling in his mind. A quick movement, a sudden drop, a momentary oversight in a busy world. He knew the child would likely never retrieve it, the parent perhaps never even realize it was gone until later. But the mitten itself, this small blue piece of fabric, held a fleeting moment of human life, a quiet truth of transient existence. He carefully placed it on a nearby low wall, hoping perhaps, against all odds, that someone might still be looking for it. It was a small act, almost imperceptible, but it was born of a new understanding, a new way of seeing the ordinary imbued with extraordinary meaning. He continued his walk, feeling a deep, quiet contentment. The rain, soft and persistent, was no longer just rain. It was a gentle lullaby, a comforting presence that mirrored the serenity he had found within. The Patchwork Manor. He had carried its warmth and wonder back into his world, and it had woven itself into the fabric of his everyday existence. The weariness that had once clung to him like a damp cloak had dissipated, replaced by a quiet sense of purpose, a gentle curiosity about the hidden stories that resided in every corner of his life. He still pursued knowledge, but now it was a pursuit tempered by profound empathy, by a deep appreciation for the quiet, unassuming magic that permeated the world. He understood that true wisdom wasn't always found in grand theories or complex arguments, but in the tender reflections on human connection, in the subtle ways lives intertwined, and the enduring memory held within the simplest of keepsakes. The indigo patch had been more than a choice. It had been an invitation, a gentle nudge into a world where ordinary moments unfurled like dreams, leaving lasting impressions of quiet belonging and a deep, comforting sense of rest. Elijah carried this newfound peace with him, a quiet secret, shared only with the soft rain and the countless, unseen threads that connected everything. His journey was not over, for the journey of quiet contemplation was endless, but it had certainly begun in the most gentle and profound of ways in the heart of rain-kissed Haven, within the quilt-lined sanctuary of the Patchwork Manor. Like this story? Subscribe for more calming tailies. He continued his walk, feeling a deep, quiet contentment. The rain, soft and persistent, was no longer just rain. It was a gentle lullaby, a comforting presence that mirrored the serenity he had found within the Patchwork manor. He had carried its warmth and wonder back into his world, and it had woven itself into the fabric of his everyday existence. The weariness that had once clung to him like a damp cloak had dissipated, replaced by a quiet sense of purpose, a gentle curiosity about the hidden stories that resided in every corner of his life. He still pursued knowledge, but now it was a pursuit tempered by profound empathy, by a deep appreciation for the quiet, unassuming magic that permeated the world. He understood that true wisdom wasn't always found in grand theories or complex arguments, but in the tender reflections on human connection, in the subtle ways lives intertwined, in the enduring memory held within the simplest of keepsakes. The indigo patch had been more than a choice. It had been an invitation, a gentle nudge into a world where ordinary moments unfurled like dreams, leaving lasting impressions of quiet belonging and a deep, comforting sense of rest. Elijah carried this newfound peace with him, a quiet secret shared only with the soft rain and the countless unseen threads that connected everything. His journey was not over, for the journey of quiet contemplation was endless, but it had certainly begun in the most gentle and profound of ways in the heart of rain-kissed haven, within the quilt-lined sanctuary of the Patchwork manor. In his city apartment, the turnstone and the wooden acorn sat on his bedside table, not as mere souvenirs, but as silent guardians of the wisdom he had acquired. They were tangible anchors in a world that often felt ephemeral, reminding him daily of the deep, quiet truths unveiled in rain-kissed haven. The soft, incessant hum of the city, once a jarring symphony of demands, now seemed to filter through. A newly acquired inner stillness, allowing the gentle rhythms of life to emerge. His academic life, previously a relentless march of deadlines and theoretical constructs, began to acquire a new dimension. His lectures, once meticulously structured presentations of data and established theories, subtly shifted. He found himself weaving in small, seemingly anecdotal observations, moments of quiet human interaction he had witnessed or experienced. He spoke less of grand historical movements and more of the individual lives that comprised them, the quiet struggles, the unheralded acts of courage. His students, initially surprised by this shift, found themselves listening with a different kind of attention, drawn into the quieter, more human aspects of the material. They found themselves contemplating not just facts, but the emotional landscapes of the past. One afternoon, during a seminar on socioeconomic theories, a usually vocal student, a young woman named Clara, fell silent. Her gaze was fixed on the rain streaks running down the window pane, her shoulders slightly hunched. Most would have dismissed it as disengagement, but Elijah, with his new understanding, saw the subtle tension in her jaw, the way her fingers absently twisted a loose thread on her sweater. He sensed a quiet storm within her. Instead of prompting her for an answer to a question, he simply paused, allowing the silence to stretch, a rare occurrence in his bustling classroom. Then he gently shifted the topic, drawing a parallel between a complex economic theory and the simple act of a community sharing resources during a difficult time, a story he remembered Hollis describing. He spoke not of models or graphs, but of trust, of quiet sacrifice, of the intricate, often unseen, threads that bind people together. Clara's shoulders relaxed almost imperceptibly. Her gaze slowly shifted from the window back to him, a flicker of something akin to relief in her eyes. It was a small moment, easily missed, but for Elijah, it was a testament to the power of shared vulnerability, of acknowledging the unspoken, of tending to the unseen narratives that shape every individual. His own research began to veer in unexpected directions. He found himself drawn to the margins of history, to the unrecorded lives, the quiet acts of resilience that rarely made it into textbooks. He spent hours poring over old letters, diaries, and local archives, not for grand revelations, but for the small human details: a mother's worried scrawl about a child's fever, a farmer's terse but heartfelt description of a bountiful harvest, a simple drawing in the margin of a ledger. These were his new relics, silent testaments to forgotten moments, to heartfelt, unsaid truths. He understood Silas's quiet reverence for his collection, for each object hummed with the echoes of a life, a choice, a fleeting feeling. His office, once a fortress of intellect, slowly transformed into a sanctuary of contemplation. The piles of books remained, but they were now organized with a deliberate grace, as if each volume held not just information, but a potential story waiting to be gently unfurled. He kept a small, smooth river stone on his desk, a quiet echo of the tarn stone, and would often hold it, letting its coolness ground him amidst the academic whirl. He found himself looking out his window more often, observing the rhythm of the campus, the comings and goings of students, each face a narrative, each step a progression. He saw the way the sunlight dappled through the leaves of the old oak tree outside his window, the intricate patterns it cast on the worn brick. It was a small daily ballet of light and shadow, previously unnoticed, now a source of quiet wonder. He began to take different routes home, consciously avoiding the fastest paths, choosing instead to wander through residential streets, past small, unassuming parks, and along stretches of pavement where old brick buildings gave way to overgrown gardens. He noticed the unique character of each home, the small, personal touches that spoke volumes about the lives lived within. A child's bright painting taped to a window, a weathered garden gnome standing guard among rosebush, a forgotten pair of work boots on a porch. Each detail was a quiet thread, a glimpse into the unseen tapestry of the city. One evening, he stumbled upon a small, neglected fountain in a forgotten plaza. Its stone basin was cracked, the water barely a trickle, and its once grand statues were covered in moss. Most people hurried past, oblivious to its crumbling beauty, but Elijah paused. He saw the way the remaining water caught the last rays of the setting sun, transforming the dirty trickle into a ribbon of shimmering gold. He noticed a single tenacious fern growing from a crack in the stone, its fronds unfurling with quiet determination. He sat on a nearby bench, the cold stones seeping through his coat, and simply watched. He thought of Hollis, of her tales of enduring memory, and the subtle ways lives intertwine. This fountain, a testament to a grander past, now stood as a silent witness to the passage of time, to the quiet persistence of nature, to the unassuming magic that could still be found in decay. It didn't offer a grand narrative, but a profound sense of continuity, a quiet echo of the deep, comforting sense of rest that could be found even in abandonment. He found himself spending more time in a local coffee shop, not hunched over papers, but simply observing. He noticed the quiet hum of conversations, the clinking of ceramic mugs, the gentle rustle of newspapers. He saw a young couple holding hands under the table, their fingers intertwined in a silent language of affection. He observed an elderly man carefully folding a crossword puzzle, his brow furrowed in concentration, a look of profound satisfaction on his face when he found the right word. These were not dramatic scenes, but they were threads, each one connecting to the vast, intricate tapestry of human experience. He felt, in those moments, a deep sense of belonging, not as an active participant, but as a quiet witness, a silent part of the shared human current. The perpetually soft rain of rain-kissed haven seemed to follow him. Even on sunny days, he found himself remembering the gentle lullaby of the village, and on days when the city was shrouded in its own soft drizzle, he felt a strange sense of familiarity, a comforting echo. The rain became a reminder of the quiet wisdom he had found, a gentle presence that mirrored the serenity now residing within him. It was a constant, soothing backdrop to his life, much like the gentle rhythm of his own breathing. His interactions with his aging parents, once strained by his academic intensity and their practical concerns, began to soften. He called them more often, not to discuss his latest research, but to simply listen to their day, to hear about the small triumphs and tribulations of their lives. He asked about their garden, about the neighbor's new dog, about the quiet routines that filled their days. He noticed the gentle tremor in his mother's voice when she spoke of a long-lost relative, the way his father's eyes softened when he recounted a memory from his youth. He saw the threads of their lives, intricately woven with his own, and felt a profound appreciation for their quiet endurance, their unassuming love. He no longer felt the need to impress them with his intellect, but simply to connect, to share the quiet space of familial warmth. One particularly cold winter evening, with the rain turning to a soft, persistent sleet, Elijah found himself drawn to the university library, not to work, but to simply sit in its quiet grandeur. He chose a worn armchair in a secluded corner, the scent of old paper and leather, a comforting presence. He closed his eyes, listening to the muffled sounds of turning pages, the distant clatter of a keyboard, the soft cough from a student at a nearby table. He felt the weight of centuries of accumulated knowledge around him, but also, more importantly, the quiet hum of countless individual minds, each engaged in its own unique journey of discovery or reflection. He thought of the Patchwork Manor, of Aurelia and her knowing smile, of Silas and his precious relics, of Hollis and her interwoven tales. He imagined the intricate tapestry of the manor's walls, each patch a story, each thread a connection. He understood now that his own life was such a quilt woven from moments both grand and infinitesimally small, from connections both profound and fleeting. The indigo patch, his chosen square, had not just unlocked a story. It had restitched the very fabric of his perception. The quiet understanding he now possessed was not a solution to life's complexities, nor a shield against its difficulties. Instead, it was a lens through which to view them, a gentle balm that soothed the edges of uncertainty. He still faced challenges, still encountered moments of frustration, but they no longer consumed him. He could hold them, observe them, and find the quiet thread of resilience, the subtle current of connection, even within the most tumultuous moments. His sleep became deeper, more restful. The restless energy that had once characterized his nights, his mind buzzing with ideas and worries, had subsided. He often drifted off to sleep with the soft echo of the rain in his mind, or the gentle imagery of a quiet stream, or the peaceful faces of Silas and Hollis. The stories he had heard and the stories he now found in his own life unfolded like dreams, leaving him with a lasting impression of quiet belonging and a profound sense of rest that permeated his waking hours as well. He knew that the journey of quiet contemplation was indeed endless. The world was full of countless unseen threads, of ordinary moments waiting to be imbued with extraordinary meaning. He would continue to discover them, one gentle observation at a time, guided by the quiet wisdom of the Patchwork Manor. His was not a life of dramatic adventure, but a rich tapestry woven from gentle wonders, a life lived with a profound appreciation for the unassuming magic that pulsed beneath the surface of everyday existence. He had found his own quiet belonging, a deep and comforting sense of peace that settled into the very core of his being, a peace that was as soft and persistent as the rain-kissed haven itself. His transformation was complete, not as a sudden revelation, but as a gentle, continuous unfurling, much like the quiet beauty of a slowly blossoming flower. He carried the Patchwork Manor within him, a portable sanctuary, forever wrapped in its warmth and wonder. Like this story? Subscribe for more calming tales.